morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever or whenever you are tuning into today's podcast. Joining me today, I have Ed Tranter, Managing Director at 73 Media. And if you don't know that name, then where have you been? Ed's a great industry spokesperson, someone who's seen it all. And I've been to his presentations as well. And I must say, very inspiring in terms of him telling it warts and all. I've invited Ed on today because he has a very interesting story to tell in his own experience of getting thrust upon him the pandemic and having to reinvent, I would say, the offering that he was going to put out to the industry in terms of events. He is the founder of the Rugby Show, which I'd love Ed to introduce that because I'll probably butcher it, I think. But Ed didn't just replicate the Rugby Show online. He thought up of something totally new and delivered it to great success. So Ed, welcome to today's podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on, mate. Really appreciate it.
I would have much rather have done this in person over a beer, I must admit.
Well, me too. Well, we can have the beer later, but have the chat now. So yes, as you say, it's very kind of you. I'm the managing director of 73 Media, and as you can see in the background, I like rugby. It's almost like I don't just change the props in the background depending on who I'm speaking to. I also run the One Earth show, so I don't have loads of sustainability and recyclable stuff in the background when I'm having calls on that. But so the Rugby Show was planned as a physical event. It was a B2C exhibition. The whole purpose of it was to champion grassroots rugby, to engage clubs, to engage fans. We called it For the Players, For the Fans, For the Game. And it was about a celebration. So we had the original premise was a physical event. We were going to have an actual half pitch built on the show floor. Clubs could come along and there'd be training sessions on fitness, injury recovery.
Yep.
All of the stands are based around products that can help you improve your game, improve your grassroots club, learn about different ways to improve your technique. We had premiership stars and internationals. I mean, we had competitions for George Cruz was going to, if you're watching this and you don't know who he is, he was in the World Cup final for England. He's about to go to Japan. He's a British Lion, plays for Saracens currently, but is just leaving. Mm-hmm. And he was going to do a competition for us where a grassroots club would win a line-out training session where he would do it live on the show floor for your club. Other people could watch it. We had Joe Marler involved, James Haskell, Sarah Hunter, who's the captain of the England Red Roses. We had all these different things lined up for physical, practical, involved bringing the community together. And then COVID-19 hoved into view. And initially, I must admit, because of the way that the press reported it and everything else, it seemed like, well, what is it? So it's like some sort of flu, is it? Turned out not so much, no. And everything came to a grinding halt. So we were a few months out. We had thousands of people registered. Everything was great. And then it wasn't. And it was clear we weren't going to be able to physically run the event.
When was that for you then, that point, Ed? When would you say was the date that you went, this is not going to work?
Well, we called it relatively early in the interest of the venue, in the interest of exhibitors, partners and everything else. We had tied up this amazing partnership with Reach PLC. So we had partnership with every single regional newspaper practically in the country, from Manchester Evening News, Birmingham News, Coventry Telegraph, Wales Online, all supporting it. And I said, the more we push information out to get people to attend, the more disappointed people are going to have, because you could see this isn't going to be stopping anytime soon. Yeah. There was no indication at all. So with about 3.5 months to go, so bearing in mind the event was end of June, early July. So I called it, 3 months before that, really. And so it proved. And then, when we were chatting before we went live, you were talking about, I can claim I'm a virtual event expert. To be honest with you, virtual events had been, before all this started, if I'm honest, virtual events to me was, you mean a webinar?
Yeah.
and I think, I do large scale events. I've done them all over the world. I've run events in 44 countries on 5 continents. And in that time, physical events has been the thing. We've done some virtual link-ups to make things, work where speakers have fallen through or whatever, but physical events. And so, so once we stopped the show, I started looking at, with the team, we started looking at, okay, what are all these options? Everyone's talking about it. I got involved in a WhatsApp group, which is, I know you're on as well, yep, with loads of people who seem to be doing 1 million of these things a week that are, generating audience in the trillions and revenue in the billions. And I was just like, well, what the hell have I been playing at? I've been doing all this stuff for years and years and years. Maybe I could have saved my hair if I'd had this stress-free virtual stuff available to me. So anyway, we looked at loads of different platforms, and we went through how they all work, and there were so many of them springing up, and in fact the platform we ended up using, Hopin, which worked really, really well for us. But what was really interesting is I was talking to them, and originally the Hopin platform wasn't due to actually launch until this month.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an actual product. Yeah. And they were like, quick, get it out. And it's been evolving how I imagine Formula One teams do, where there's a complete revolution every week of how everything works. But there's a lot, it's a bit like Betamax and VHS. You go through all these different things, you look at stuff and go, oh, that's going to work, that's going to work, that's going to work. But we just did a lot of research, and I wanted to be really confident, because at the time I just said, we're just not going to do the show till next year. We'd moved the whole thing back a year, and that's what we told everybody. It's what we told the exhibitors. It's what we told the attendees. We told everyone. Okay. Through no fault of our own. You can just look out the window. You can see what's going on. We're going to move it a whole year. And then finally, I was convinced with the virtual models. I wanted us to do tests for ourselves. I wanted to go through everything else. And so then, and I wanted to make it a community thing, so engage. But I couldn't get my head around trying to replicate what I've just explained to you as the physical event in the virtual environment. So we kind of changed the whole thing, really, where everything obviously was about content. Everything was about engagement and learning and training and doing, but it was all done in sessions. And I based it, because everybody that knows me in the industry knows I like a bit of rock music and a bit of like a guitar. So I kind of based the model on Glastonbury. Okay. So the idea was you had different stages, you build it all up, and then you have your main acts that you can build up to at the end of each day. And that was kind of my model for it, and get everyone to be engaged. I wanted to work with a partner, and I wanted to do some good with it. And partly, to be honest with you, partly I just wanted to do an event. I was just, I was getting stir crazy with not having done one. I thought it'd be good for the team. I thought it would be good for the brand and in terms of engagement. And I thought if we could do some good with it. So we approached, I phoned up Lawrence Dallaglio, whose charity, Dallaglio Rugby works with kids that are kind of permanently excluded in schools, and so desperately in need of help. And of course, most charities raise their funding through large events, and none of them are running any. So I said to him, right, I know we were going to support you and give you a percentage of the profits for the physical event. I propose we do the same thing. We're going to do it virtually, and we're going to do it in 5 weeks' time. What do you reckon? And so he didn't respond. I wondered if the screen had frozen initially, which does happen in Zoom. I live in the countryside. Anything can happen. But no, I think he was just like, well, okay, talk me through it again. And then he had a bit of a mull and said, no, this is really great. And so we kind of pooled our little black books of rugby players. I won't lie, his is better than mine. And we went for it. And once we got the platform, got them engaged and everything else, we had about 2.5 to 3 weeks to bring together all of the content. And we had just over 2 weeks to market the event from scratch, having told everyone we weren't doing anything. And that's what we delivered. And in the end, it was 2.5 days we did it for. We started on the Friday, then all day Saturday, all day Sunday, from 9 a.m. till about 8 p.m. We had content running continuously on 2 stages. So we had 63 speakers. You went all live. You went all live. 95% live.
Wow. So you could? Did your team do that all on your own, or did you bring partners in and stuff? How did
man! So we were going to. I've got this kind of death or glory kind of approach to things. It was like, should we do a virtual event? Why not? right, okay, well, if we start about, well, this big, yeah, okay, let's go. Let's go. So actually, no, we were going to do it ourselves. And, you know, I guess anyone watching this thing will also be amazed that Mike Seaman and I are not in lockdown together, because we always seem to be side by side on everything. And it's, you know, I mean, when Exhibition News will cover it when we do finally elope. But at the moment, so Mike had already run his digital running show for his event that had been moved. And and obviously I knew Simon and the team at Silverstream from working with them on physical events. And he said, you know, I've used them. And I spoke to Simon, we talked through, my ops director went through it with all with him, and we got them in to do all the production. And I have to be honest, I am so glad that we did, because I don't know, I think having not done it to that scale, a virtual event is no joke. It's no less stressful. It's no less involved than a physical event in terms of, you know, we were sat there, we were having things, you know, as you said, I'm quite honest, there are things that went wrong that probably didn't look like they went wrong on the day. And issues we have with minutes to go. We had speakers drop out, or technical issues with speakers with 10 minutes notice or an hour's notice. And it's all live, and you're going, but having them in your ear and saying, and we're coming to you in 5, 4, 3, and then I'm going, hi, and welcome to the virtual rugby show.
And that to me is where it's worth investing, isn't it? In terms of not only having somebody there support you from a technical aspect of that, the show calling, right? It's like the whole production element of it, the stitching it all together.
It's a huge task.
But also, I guess somebody else there just to, you know, you've got to fall back on somebody. It's not you pressing the button and getting the next speaker in, and like, because like you say, you've got probably a million and one other things that you would have to do anyway, like just like a physical event. And I think that's the way that a lot of professional organisers like yourself will end up going, the same that they would never imagine running the AV at a physical event, would they? You just like get the professionals in, let them do it.
I'll just be there, sat at the back going, don't worry, Aztec, I've got this. I think it's this one, is it? Bear with.
I'd probably unplug the wrong HDMI lead and take the whole lot out, mate, personally. They keep me well away from it. So 95% live. I think smart move bringing in a professional company like Silverstream, who clearly know what they're doing. They're a really well-respected name in the sector for delivering that high-end video live. I mean, that's what they do at live events, isn't it? They actually produce live events.
They've had to pivot too. So we were, you know, in your pivot on the back wall, but they're in the same position. They can't physically do events at the moment. You know, I mean, hopefully we're now getting to a point where we can do, but they've been sat there waiting to do the things that they're so good at, and they're saying, well, hang on, how can that translate? How can we add benefit elsewhere? And it was really only a matter of a couple of weeks before, I believe, forgive me, Simon, if I'm not exactly right on the dates, but it was a matter of a very short period of time between when you know, Raccoon and we got involved with them to do these things, that they'd actually made the move and transitioned over to be able to offer those services. And it, as you say, it's having that level of professionalism. In my case, I was dealing with 63 speakers, and we did it across multiple stages. We got them all together really, really short notice, and the people we got were, as what it was described to one person that wrote to me afterwards that attended the event, that it was like the Avengers Assemble of rugby. So we had, I mean, some of the WhatsApp groups I'm now on are insane, because, I mean, to be fair, I don't think they'd want to hear from me now, but we did these WhatsApp groups for every single panel because everybody wanted to hear in WhatsApp. What we discovered was sending them emails and huge, you know, really detailed and thorough housekeeping and everything else. And they're going, have you read the email? What email? Excellent. Okay, so we ended up doing most of it through WhatsApp because it was the only way that half the speakers would communicate. And we would put each panel in a specific WhatsApp group. So any questions about what they're doing, we would clear them off as sections.
That's a great piece of advice, that there, mate, because I think as event organisers, we tend to rely so heavily, don't we, on email? And we kind of think maybe that, or at least I would, my opinion would be, maybe WhatsApp's a bit intrusive. But when it comes to making sure that actually people get information that is important to you, and they can leave and delete afterwards, they don't have to stay in it. But that's a great tip there that I think I might take away for our event in terms of speaker comms, because, well, for one, you can check with Reddit, can't you, for a start.
But also from panels, the great thing about the panel stuff was that we would put the host and all the panels in each group and me. So I would then say, right, and I would do an intro thing, add them all in and say, right, guys, here you are. This is your panel. If you've got any questions or queries about the content that's going to be covered, the host is this person and they're on it. If you've got any technical queries, it's me. And then also I would then send, for example, when it comes to their session, if we've done tiles or marketing for it, I would then add that into the group saying, could you please put this all out on all of your social media? And then what also happens is one of them comes back and says, I've done it. And the other three go, oh, bloody hell, I haven't.
Yeah.
And they go away and do it. But in some cases, we had nothing within them other than a thumbs up or no problem. In other cases, they started a real debate with each other about what they were going to talk about to make the content really strong. That's in a way that never would have happened actually previously. So it kind of worked really well. But I'm in a British Lions. So we did a British Lions as the headline act for Saturday. So I'm in a WhatsApp group with me, Martin Bayfield, Martin Johnson, Brian O'Driscoll, and Sam Warburton.
I feel like this was a whole big ruse actually just to get into a WhatsApp group with that group right there, mate. I think you
just did a screen grab, but that's it. I'm done. I didn't even run the event. I'm making it all up.
Brilliant.
But so that worked really well in terms of that communication, because as you say, you can see that they've read it, but also they respond. I find that everyone responded a lot better to that actually than they did to emails. Even if they had read it, they just never responded.
There's some statistics out there, and I'd hate to pull them up now. Well, I'm going to suggest some, but it might not be super accurate. They're definitely out there. I'll try and find them and put them in the show notes. That I think 93% of people will read a message, no matter where it's from. Even if it's like an unknown number or whatever, you tend to read them straight away. And I think there's also a statistic at that same report that said that you can actually message somebody 7 times before they get annoyed, where you can only email somebody about 3. So in terms of being able to be intrusive but get the information across and keep in communication, it would suggest that messaging apps like WhatsApp are a great way to go, because you just got direct access to people.
And it seems to be, because I know we've in the group that we're in, people often talk about, and in other groups I'm in, often talk about, should we move to Slack or to Guild or to whatever else? And then the conversation always arises, and every single time so far everyone goes, no, I'd rather stick with WhatsApp if that's all right. Yeah. Because it feels like you're not having to do yet another thing. Yep. So it's part of your normal life. Someone's communicating, you communicate straight back. And as you say, I'm doing it all the time in lockdown at the moment anyway, because I can't see people. Yeah. So, but I think one of the making any kind of virtual pivot for us had to be, I didn't want to take a step back. So I started in publishing originally, magazine publishing, before the internet existed. Yeah. Strong scenes, because I'm that old. 73 is in fact how old I am.
How old you are, yeah. It's not really good for your age.
Well, it's amazing the filters you can put on now. But I remember when somebody came up with the idea of page-turning magazines, and I just sort of sat there, and people still do them. So apologies if you're, good luck with it, but apologies if it sounds like I'm in any way saying that they're crap, but they are. And so what happens was you get this thing where someone goes, well, I've got a magazine and I've now got this digital platform. Great news. I'm just going to take the magazine. I'm just going to drop it there. Yeah. And it just doesn't, there is no medium that instantly translates into the new one. And so with the physical events, I think physical events, I maintain and will still maintain that physical events are going to be the lion's share of engagement for events in the future. I firmly believe that. It might take time, but I firmly believe it.
Yep.
If there's one thing that 4.5 months worth of Zoom meetings, Skype meetings, Teams meetings and everything else has shown me, this is not the future. It's amazing that the technology's there and it helps and it gives another thing for us to do, but I don't believe you get the same level of engagement that you do with physical speaking to people. Like you said right at the start, this would have been better if we could have sat opposite each other and had a beer.
Yeah, I think to your point, absolutely, because I think what events have done, and will now be even more so going forward. It will be the premier version of whatever is delivered online. And I think the biggest downfall to online events is that they could potentially go the way of how people interpreted a webinar to be. You know, webinars were massively used by marketing. I think, and again, on statistics, 66% of marketers use some form of webinars through their career as a way to engage an audience and try and sell to them. And to be fair, they've been massively abused as a content marketing strategy. Now, online events have absolutely got the same path ahead of them. I have no doubt about that. People will abuse positioning an online event as a thinly veiled guise of, we're going to just pitch you, especially if it's by a corporate company. Now, physical events, people are much more inclined to really keenly detail what it is before they give you the registration and time actually on site. So I think actually in some ways online events will actually elevate physical events a little bit more into being that premium experience, and I think that'll be beneficial. But they're certainly not going to all of a sudden carve out half the industry and it's disappeared overnight. I don't think that for a second.
No, but I do think that there is a place for them. I think there is a place for those. I think there will be a place for hybrid events, but it's understanding what those are, and then it's also trying to deliver the event in keeping with what it's good for. So, you know, coming back to, we basically scrapped the Rugby Show and created the virtual Rugby Show. We even changed the URL. We did everything from scratch in a 5-week period. And the reason that we did that was because you can't offer the same thing. You just can't.
Yep.
So what we did was we looked at the strengths of virtual, and the strengths of it are the audience that I got in terms of speakers. The range of speakers we got was insane. I mean, it really was. Honestly, I think anybody looking at our speaker lineup and then trying to go out to find a similar situation where you would find all of those people on the same program would be looking for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But in a physical event, I never could have done it because they're in different parts of the world in some cases. You know, Clive Woodward did his session from Tignes in France, where he's running a program for Olympic skiers and so on. So he did his piece from there. And we had Brian O'Driscoll, obviously, was in Ireland, and, you know, all these different people were all over. But the benefit of virtual was that we only needed an hour of their time. We didn't need them to travel anywhere. We didn't need them to do anything. We needed an hour of their time. And if they were available, maybe 5 or 10 minutes for us to be able to do the equipment check and test and so on. And so what that then makes you do, or made me do, is look at it and say, right, if that's the basics, in that case, we've got, depending on time zones and where they are around the world, we've got the entire world of rugby to go for. So who are we going for? And we ended up with like 14 World Cup winners and, you know, all these different things, because we went, right, the content has to be, you know, up here. I mean, we always aim for that, but in a physical event, it's not possible to deliver it like we've been able to do. So we now can. So that's what our event's going to hinge on. We're going to, and then it comes back to your original premise. And the original premise for us was it being about grassroots. So therefore, what we then did was we went to the grassroots game and we said, right, we got some fabulous supporters and ambassadors to help us. So as a particular shout out has to go out to Sean Phelan from Fill Your Boots Rugby, who runs this thing as his own project. He's got about 20,000 followers on social media in grassroots rugby, and he set up a player exchange. So basically, a lot of problems for grassroots clubs is finding players to actually fill the 15. And he set up this thing where people could say, well, I'm in the area of wherever on holiday, I fancy a game. And he would connect them to a club and they would play. So I got him on board to help us with the grassroots stuff. And we did a player panel of grassroots where it was 4 grassroots players. We got 4 representatives from clubs on another panel. We talked about fundraising for clubs. We talked about all these different things, but we interlaced them with the big stars. And every single one of those players and every single one of those representatives of their clubs, who might be, you know, they might work in Greggs, they might work in an accountant's, they might be a policeman, they could be any role. But if their surname was Johnson, then their speaker biog and photo was right next to Martin Johnson, double Brian, double British Lions captain and World Cup winner, because I wanted it to be truly all the community together. And we also made sure that the panels where we didn't for the Lions, obviously, and we didn't for the growth of the women's game, because that was all women, but we did for backs and for forwards and for the sevens. We split them so that every panel was half women, half men.
Yep.
And made sure that it was included, it was engaged. We did a skill session, so we got Jimmy Gopperth, 3-time Golden Boot winner and Premiership Player of the Year, and Wasps, which are the greatest rugby club in the world, as you can tell from my background. But Jimmy was absolutely fantastic. So he did a kicking session, which he pre-recorded. This was one of the few bits we did pre-record. And he filmed all of that, and people could tune in. And then he joined the Q&A, and he was giving people all sorts of advice on how to improve their kicking, how to get their weight through the ball better, and all these. So it wasn't just looking at heroes. Yep. We tried to keep to the original premise of what the concept of the event was, but we used all of the strengths of the new platform, and so we completely changed it in that regard. So it was only really Jimmy's kicking session. We did the session on grassroots fundraising and 2 fitness sessions, and everything else was live.
That's amazing, mate. Did you see a real high level of engagement rate then with the audience? Because I would imagine that you narrowed the gap almost substantially in order the accessibility of me as a normal punter who wants to ask my idol or that great sportsman that I look up to my questions, and through maybe hopping and the technology, that gap was really narrowed down. Whereas a live event, there's still the element of, even if somebody's in the audience, do they stick their hand up and ask that question? Do they put themselves out there? It's very difficult for a lot of people, that, isn't it? Do you think the technology helped to narrow the gap? Did it help improve engagement? Did you see lots of questioning come through? What did that look like?
We had huge amounts. So the chat was rife throughout. I mean, throughout the whole 2.5 days, there was a lot of banter. It was there was some strong sentiment and a lot of back and forth, which was really great. But there was also a lot of engagement about the actual game, the future of the game, all these different things. One thing I would say was, within the platform, normally you can select, because it's originally, I guess, created more for B2B. So you can select all the delegates and you can see everyone that's there. But if you're a speaker, you also have to be a delegate. So we switched that off, because for a B2C thing where there are so many idols of the game, if Sam Warburton comes on and is suddenly inundated with every Welsh fan going, can you give me a shout out to blah blah, because they can see them and they can private message them. Yeah. We made the decision to switch that bit off. But in terms of chat, everybody could chat throughout. And we got a lot of engagement and questions. And interestingly enough, actually, we monitored the questions in the chat, and whoever was hosting had their mobile phone on, and we posted all the questions in WhatsApp, and they read them and answered them that way, so that we could, and we didn't filter any, because there weren't any kind of really, we would have done if it was objectionable. Sure. Some people take the whole banter. There's a lot of things that get excused as banter. Yeah. So we wouldn't have allowed that, but we didn't have anything like that at all. And it was really simple, because, if you're on the last night, we had Chris Robshaw, former captain of England, captain of Harlequins, and it was his first big interview talking about moving to America. And we got Hugo Monnier, interviewed him. And so Hugo was getting all the questions through and from the crowd, and everyone was able to. So he wasn't having to think about lots of different things going on the screen. It just made the chat flow. And despite the excitement and stress and near heart attack of everything being live, and some of the things that were a bit more squeaky, which I'm happy to tell you about, but actually for me, it felt much more like the buzz you get of a physical event, because it was live. Yep. I know a lot of people pre-record and then do live Q&A, or just pre-record in full. I think if you can stand the stress of it, I would really heartily recommend. I mean, you need proper support, and I I think it would have been a very different experience if we had not had Silverstream in the background. But if you've got proper support from people that really know what they're doing, and if you're engaged with your market and also have the confidence to do it yourself, actually, I would do it live every time.
Yeah.
Every time if you can, because people sense the difference. The people in the audience can tell. You can see when something's pre-recorded. The energy isn't quite the same. People also know that they're being pre-recorded so that they can stop and redo a bit or do whatever. You could feel it much more, because a trip of the tongue or whatever was still a trip of the tongue and there. And
I think in your environment, with it being people of notoriety as well, like somebody asking a question and then seeing that relayed there and then is very much going to build up the engagement and the emphasis on it being right there in the moment, isn't it? Rather than having to submit your question before and then we get to it at that point, and then you kind of like, when's my question getting answered and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, no. So that was really good, and it was exciting. I mean, one of our bumps in the road. So we had a couple of significant bumps in the road, neither of which you can prepare for, and neither of which were anyone's fault. But DC, Danny Kerr, unfortunately slipped a disc, and he was due to do 2 sessions. He was hosting the Need for Speed session for sevens and also the back session, but he slipped a disc, had to go to hospital, had to have, anyway, he couldn't do it, and it was really short notice that he couldn't do it. So we had to try within a very short period of time, and bless him, he was so gutted not to be part of it and was so helpful in trying to help us. But he was therefore out of the picture, and we had to find replacements for both sessions really, really quickly. And that is when you're doing it all live. And if it had been pre-recorded, that never would have happened. Yeah. So and we were fortunate that other people stepped in really easily, and we were able to, through the contacts we had and the people that were already on the panels, we were able to replace. That was exciting.
I said on a good point though, I've had the experience where I've had somebody fly to come to my event from Europe just to see one speaker, and that speaker didn't make it that day. Now, at least none of your audience had to fly anywhere or do anything, so there's kind of a benefit to doing it online, that you can pull people in and out, and other than them not being able to see that one particular person, at least they've not gone to any other great lengths to make that happen or cost themselves more money. So I guess that's kind of one of the
forgiveness too, I think, because because despite the fact that everyone's been inundated with free content of where we could basically sit watching webinars, virtual events and everything else 24/7, but there's also an understanding that it's new and that people are doing new things. So one of the things I would absolutely recommend, apart from getting a proper production support, and obviously I'd recommend Silverstream, but is to think about the length of time you're engaging people for, what your expectations are, and what you do to fill the gaps in between. So it feels like there's something integral and exciting about it. You've got to create, I always say for live events, you have to start creating the excitement about your physical event from the first email or message that someone receives. Yeah. So the design, the brand has to run through all that process right the way, and then be made real at the physical event. So the look and feel of how we had the screen, when we're on a Zoom call like this, for example, it's just blank. Some people have those, kind of virtual backgrounds, and we've developed some and stuff where half my head disappears because it doesn't like bald people and all that sort of stuff. And then my children walk up during a meeting, and then suddenly this hand comes up like that. So I think for me, those things are still a little bit like PowerPoint, where just because you can make the transition doesn't mean you should. But for having something that really works and engages, so we put a lot of work into the physical links and segues in between sessions to make it look really, really great. Once again, Silverstream were brilliant with that. So everybody was sat effectively on a rugby stadium that was lit up at night, and the pitch was there and the people were there, and just those transitions actually make a big difference. Yeah, because it just keeps the human mind, our brains and our attention span require changes to keep us engaged and enthused. So one of the other things we did was I wanted to link it a little bit like when they did the big night in for children in need and Red Nose Day. In between, they effectively did like adverts, small videos all together, and that's what we did. We created 2-minute slot or 3-minute slot videos, which we ran a series of for sponsors, partners, and the charity. So in between each session, where you might have 30 minutes break before the next session, some ran over and it was 5 minutes, some were an hour. And in each one of them, depending on what stage you're on, we would have all these things running through, which made really engaging content, made sure that they didn't run too often. And in the most part, we were able to get them from the people that we were working with, where it didn't cost us anything. It wasn't an additional fee. Most people had their own little bits. Yeah. And if it wasn't, we could segment things that they did have to make them work. But it just became a new format where it was high production quality, and Jim Hamilton's off traveling the world talking about the Barbarians or talking about this, that, and the other. The RFU supplied one. And all of those different things make for it. It's all like a palate cleanser. Mm-hmm. So before I've got more talking heads on screen, I've now got this again with music and everything else. And then I'm ready to go for the next one.
That's a really good way of putting it. Palate cleanse, I think, yeah, rather than doing stuff back to back, have that revival moment, isn't it? So pump some energy into the room for people.
Well, like virtual events want dwell time just like we want in physical ones, don't they? But dwell time works in a different way. It's the sheer volume of energy, and I can't take any more. Yeah. And then it's also about your content. It's a very different way of doing content for a physical event, because if you're in the physical show and you've got, say, 3-4 theatres running stuff back to back to back, it doesn't really matter as long as they're not conflicting. Yeah. So people can choose to walk over there or to walk over there or to walk over there, or they can go and have a coffee, or they can walk around the show and still be in. Whereas with what we're doing, we're asking them really to bear with, join us at 9 a.m. and still be there at 8 o'clock at night. Well, no one's going to do that. No one's going to do that. Yeah. Unless they have literally died in the chair. No one's found them yet.
So what would you change? What would you do differently then? I'm sure this is not going to be a single moment in time and that's it. It's done for 2020. Clearly this is, I'm hoping so, that you're going to do it again in 2021. What would you do differently, do you think, now that you've had the experience of delivering this the first time? Yeah.
I think we had a mountain of notes. So we just had a mountain of notes at the end.
Is it all those event debrief notes that never see the light of day, though?
Well, no, because we've put them in practice now, because we're looking at other virtual events, so we're trying to learn and create a playbook. Okay. So that at some point I really can put virtual events expert. No. So one of the big things, well, certainly I'd give myself a bit more time. Mm-hmm. Trying to do something from scratch without a web. But we built, fair play to Dante, our creative director, who built the entire website from scratch. I basically said, right, let's get we talked about it. We got a new URL. I sent him the DNS over for the new URL and said, can you make a website? And then 4 days later, it was done. And he did the whole thing from scratch, and we got the whole content from scratch. Everything was done from scratch. So, whilst that was amazing and inspirational, and, the movie rights are for sale if anyone wants them, but it put quite a strain on the team, I won't lie. Yeah. So definitely you want to give yourself a decent length of time, but don't be put off. I guess what I would say is don't be put off by a short window. If you've got the ability to deliver it, and you are confident in delivering the content, and you've got a base and you think it can really work, we've proven that with 2.5 weeks notice, if you're determined enough, you can actually deliver it. But as I say, I would give yourself more time, because obviously more time is always better. So we are planning for running both physical and virtual next year. Yep. Cool. So we're going to run them both still. And so that was one thing. Another thing was what we learned as we went through, which was things like actually pick the tool for virtual where people are going to communicate with you and actively do so. And I'm not just talking marketing here. I'm talking about the life and death of a virtual event is the content you put on within it. An exhibition, we've all been to exhibitions, mainly in Germany, but We've all been to exhibitions where I don't care about the content. Here's 18,000 square metre stand, followed by another 18,000 square metre stand. Yeah. And we'll be here for the next 3 weeks. Hope you can join us. So not, it's not content for a lot of particularly B2B events in physical events. A lot of that content is obviously hugely important, but it's hugely important to attract visitors. It's not the whole purpose of it being. Yeah. Whereas for a virtual event, it really is. They're only coming for the content, and then the ancillary benefit to exhibitors is you've got all these people here, and will they engage with you? So yeah, that's a big thing. And that the housekeeping, we thought we'd been so thorough in a short period of time again, but with housekeeping. And what we discovered was that despite having written reams of information, which if you followed all of it, you couldn't possibly go wrong. All that anyone actually read was, your session time is here. We will send you out a link an hour before, and this is what you're going to do. And they didn't read anything else. So the WhatsApp thing really then helped us get through that. And we only really created it about 3 days before the event.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I can imagine people can be quite dismissive of all that important information because they've got the bit that in their head, that's all that they need to know, isn't it? Which is like you say, their session time and stuff. Yeah.
So it's things like, and you then get great, as you say, great characters of the game. Our headliner on the Friday night was Joe Marler. Okay. Who is just one of my favourite people in rugby. Is just hilariously, everything that can go wrong, Joe can cause you to feel is about to happen. But he was a hugely popular session, really, really popular. So there was the bits right at the start where he pretended that he'd frozen. He pretended he couldn't hear the person interviewing him. He then pretended that his wife had left him at the start of lockdown when the interviewer said to him, "How's your wife?" It was just, I've actually got a photo of my ops director, Ed, because I only employ Eds. And he was at the other side, he was literally like this on the other side of the thing. And I'm cracking up.
That's brilliant.
But he was literally just head in his hands. And so, you get those kinds of moments, which you wouldn't get if it was pre-recorded. So those things are like real gold. And even things like the one that went the most wrong, really, was we had Phil Vickery, who obviously captained the Lions, captained England when we lost the World Cup final in 2007, won the World Cup in 2003, and then as obviously most importantly won Celebrity MasterChef.
Yep,
and so he's very passionate about food, and so he said, it's lunchtime, we're going to get him to do a cooking session. And so he agreed to do it. So he did this whole cooking thing. He did 2 sessions where he cooked these amazing meals and talk you through it. But because of the complexity of it, we were going to have to pre-record it.
Yep.
So we pre-recorded both sessions. And then I was trying to get hold of him on the morning. And with about 30 minutes to go, having tried absolutely everything, he couldn't upload the videos. The technology couldn't work. Silverstream tried everything. I tried everything. Everyone was going back and forth. And it just wasn't happening for us at all. So about 10 minutes beforehand, I think this is going to be a cup of tea interrupting the interview there. Strong scenes.
Hey, listen, it's live, mate. Well, it's not live; it's pre-recorded, but we'll leave that.
Makes it feel more live now.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, so with about 10, we ended up with about 15, 20 minutes to go. I was on the phone to him saying, right, we've got an idea. I've spoken with Silverstream as to what we can do. And, and what we're going to do is I'm going to interview you for 45 minutes live, and you're going to cook whatever is ever in your fridge. And so twofold things. So one was, he was going, yeah, right, mate, that sounds good. And I was thinking to myself, I've never interviewed anyone in my life. I'm not a TV presenter. Oh my word. But stay calm. Look effortless. Just chilled. So he said, well, okay, I've got a loaf of sourdough that's just about to be ready in the oven because I was making that for the family anyway.
Yeah.
So I could prepare some sourdough now to show you how to do it, then bring a loaf out, and then I've got a bit of steak and some peppers and onion. I'll make a steak sandwich, and then we'll just chat. I said, brilliant, let's do that then. And that's what we did. And we did it for 45 minutes, and it was brilliant. I mean, it was absolutely brilliant. He was talking all about his love of food, where it came from, but he was talking about how he started in rugby and viewed rugby club, and he can still name the first captain or the captain of the 15 he was in when he was 13 years old, and he's still friends with. Now, all of those people he started off with have never done anything like what he's done, but he was talking about the community, and it fitted so perfectly with the whole ethos of what we're trying to do, and he was absolutely brilliant. And so, those bumps in the road, actually, I think that content, once again, because it was live and genuine, was probably far better than the stuff he'd pre-recorded.
It's interesting, isn't it? You think that the pre-record is going to be the smooth way to go, and then actually it becomes the technical hitch, by the sounds of it, of the event. But I think this is where, and this for me will be the difference between professional online virtual hybrid events from companies like yourself, who have that experience and the ability and I suppose the guts to go and do something right at that moment in time. Like, I can imagine lots of companies who might use online and virtual events to promote something. If that was them, they would have just had to cancel it. It wouldn't that segment wouldn't have happened, because they wouldn't have had the, I suppose, the ability or the experience to kind of go, no, we're just going to do this and we're going to make it work and it's going to be fantastic. We'll see how it goes. I think that's where
what's the worst that can happen?
It could burn the steak. You could overcook it.
but you sort of go through these things, and you do learn from it, and it helps you, and it re-emphasized the live thing, and I just think that actually the bits that we can make things too slick, and I think if things get too slick, both in physical and, I'm not saying be unprofessional. It's not, slick and professional are not mutually, you have to have both. I think that those bumps in the road, those people moments, the genuine moments, are the things that make events. Because otherwise you could be anywhere doing anything. But the memories from physical events that people get, the engagement that they get, the joke that happened that no one was expecting to happen because he fed off the crowd or she fed off the crowd at the time. All those kinds of things are what make for a memorable event. It's those little, Kodak moments, as they used to call them, I guess, that kind of all build up to making something special. And if everything is just, and now we're going to do this, and it's this, and it's this, and, and it sounds like somebody that's normally doing announcements for, cinemas and stuff, doing voiceovers in the foyer now, and all this sort of stuff. It might feel really impressive that you've managed to do all these things, but it's also dehumanized it. And if there's one thing at the moment I think that people are missing, it's a connection. It's the human connection. We are designed to connect with each other. That's what we're about, relationships and chat and talking. And that's why lockdown has been so hard for so many people.
Yeah.
So I think you can't forget that in your planning.
And I think everybody keeps asking me, like, virtual events, they're going to, exhibitions and live events, nobody's going to go to them anymore. I'm getting so many, I suppose, tabloid and outside industry people ask me those questions and try and make points about that happening because all of a sudden this technology is in place. And my example to them is the total opposite of how these online communities, through gaming, through esports and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden are creating these physical events on scale to connect those people up. Because even though somebody might have only ever engaged with somebody else digitally and not even seeing them face to face like this, it's through a computer game, there's still that desire inbuilt into everybody to meet up and connect. And that's the serendipity that makes events just so great. Is they're emotive, aren't they? They go away with them having a feeling about something. And then when if we talk about brand equity and people buying into something, then if you're a company and you want to put yourself in that and align with that, that's the best way for people to feel good about you. So yeah, I think I agree with you. Virtual events, hybrid events will have their place. I think as professional organisers, we'll use them as a marketing tool, an inclusivity tool to be able to connect people up that just for whatever reason can't physically make it to our event. Maybe that's regionally, ill health, whatever. But it will never be, for me, the replacement. It will only be a tool that we layer on
Yeah.
top.
It's another channel, isn't it? I mean, it's another channel, and like every channel that's gone before it, there's upset at the start, and everyone goes, "Oh my goodness me, this is the end of whatever." You know, there are still plenty of print magazines out there. You know, when the commercial internet first came out, everyone was, "That's that then. That's the end of magazines. Everyone will be, you know, and Google Glass and all this sort of stuff, and that's how everyone will be doing everything." But it's not the case. It's just it finds its natural level, and people want to, you know, from a just purely business perspective, businesses want to engage with audiences, and they have to engage with them in order to sell their product. And to sell their product and engage with them, they have to engage with them in the way that the audience wants to be engaged with. So some of that will be physical events, some of that will be virtual events, some, you know, because there is an opportunity for virtual. If you're a company that normally has to do, you know, they have their client meetings and we do 50 of them, 50 people here, 50 people here, and 50 people there, and it's across Europe, and you can do one really cool integrated virtual event and get everyone involved that way and do all the markets together, and then pitch that and you can now network with your peers in other countries, then suddenly that's got something, that's got some potential.
Yeah. Because
it's, you know, from the business perspective, we don't have to run 20 events or whatever, but it doesn't stop them from still needing to go to the big industry trade show where 50,000 or 5,000 or whatever the market size is that people attend. Yeah. It's, you do stuff that's fit for purpose and you use it for what it's good at.
Yeah.
And then that's where the opportunity is. You can't see everything as a threat, otherwise we'd never leave the house, not that we're allowed to.
Well, let's be honest about it, mate. Our job is to keep people safe, and sometimes for certain people that's a challenge because they're suicidal or they're out to kill themselves. I had once had a guy decide to stand on a trestle table on a stage and fall off and break his nose at an event. You know, some people are inclined. It's our job to keep people safe, but on the face of it, if there was ever a career that you would steer clear of because of risk, it would be events, right? Because you're dealing with people and you can't really control people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it will be a funnel. It will be a way for us to leverage more marketing, publish more, support the sector, the niche that we're working in further with content. And I think, you know, what I'm taking away from this is just because you had something set in stone does not mean that you have to replicate that to support your community or to make a success of it. Actually, it's very apparent that you took the opportunity to think massively outside of the box with the theme and go, how can we make this a really, really good thing? You've got bigger balls than me, mate, because I wouldn't go 95% live. I really wouldn't.
Well, I'm 6'8", so I guess in order to be in proportion, mate, I've got to...
I mean, that's definitely going. But again, it proves that it can be done. You know, it proves that what happens, which is a live event, can happen live online with some very great partners and obviously a clearly talented team as well.
Yeah, no, the team were phenomenal. Yeah.
Mate, I appreciate you've got probably 1,000,001 things in your diary. Namely, probably the local pub. I can hear that calling already. I'd love to have you back on another point, maybe after your next hybrid event and how that compared in terms of that. And I know you're working with some of because you're also an agency working with some of your customers at the moment to kind of deliver that. So I'd love to hear your musings and reflection once you've had that experience as well, back to it.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to.
For anybody that wants to connect up with you that's not already connected to you, where's the best place to find you? Is it a LinkedIn? Is it an Instagram?
So the best way to find me, I guess, just Ed Tranter on LinkedIn. Then you can just go to our website, which is 73media.com. Sadly, all words, because the one with the numbers had already gone. But I was determined to stick with the company name by that stage. I'd got a logo I liked. So 73media.com. And you can get hold of me. That's got my email and my contact details on. Always happy to chat. As you say, I mean, we are, as well as being an organizer in our own right, we also operate as an event agency. So we deliver all of these kinds of things for clients across multiple markets, any size, anywhere around the world. So whether it's physical and now virtual or indeed hybrid, there are all manner of things that we can do. So always happy to talk to people.
Any type of event, any type. Anybody that's listening or watched today, if you've liked what you've heard, if you like what you see through Ed, please give this podcast a like and share, and kind of help the content get out there. I'm quite proud to say that I've just had my podcasting company, my host, say that we've passed 50,000 listeners of the Event Industry News podcast globally since we launched it a couple of years ago. So definitely room to grow, I think, in terms of the sector out there. Ed, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I will definitely invite you back for another one.
Cheers. Speak to you soon. Cheers, mate.